What's up, everyone? I would say sports fans usually, and if you're a sports fan and you're watching this, that's cool because not everybody necessarily is going to be an American who watches this, but everyone everywhere is going to be subject to the politics that goes on where you stay. I just wanted to watch this because it's of interest to me. I wanted to just share my thoughts. I don't usually share my opinions in terms of my everyday life, usually because I have such strong opinions. It can turn into a debate that goes on for a while. I've learned a while ago to not let the emotions get the better of me. I transfer that over to my sports takes and opinions that I share. I feel, for the most part, whenever you do, when I say you, I mean anyone, whenever one does have a discussion where there is a hot debate on one or more different views that are usually opposing each other, for all that each individual believes in what they say, I can truly say that I have never, ever, ever seen anyone say, you know what, at the beginning of this conversation, I thought this, now I think that. I've never seen it happen. I'm not saying it hasn't, I just never seen it. About the only time you ever come close to that is if you're arguing over past history in terms of what happened. Did this team win? Did that team win? Did this issue get voted? Was it about this? Was this issue about that? Something that can be concretely decided by checking history to see what was recorded. And that's the only time I've ever seen anybody change their position. But in terms of a philosophy of this is how I think this should be done, this is how I think this team should go about, this is the player I think is better than that player, things like that, I've never seen anyone change their mind. So I'm thinking to myself, why am I going to be bothered to get worked up full of emotion when I can just state my case, try to be intellectual about it as possible. You want to at least I do. I want to speak from more than just I want this because I want this. This guy's better because I say this guy's better because it's I mean, if it has value to yourself, that's really much all it ever really needs to have. But if all it really never needs to have is just value to yourself, why do you even bother to share it with somebody else in the first place? I mean, are you trying to change that person's mind, or are you just trying to say what you think and you don't care if you change that person's mind? That's going to be probably different for each individual. But not getting off the track too far. Just this is the fifth and the first part of the testimony. There's one more part still to go, as it turns out. This is also the first clip after what proved to be the last break for the day. They took about an hour break and then came back. So you'll hear this first clip here, and then there'll be one more clip to go in the parts that I have recorded to show, to let everyone voice their opinions on. Also, again, I want to thank MSNBC. It was the feed that I got the video from. I don't know which channel, I guess it's the most neutral, but it was the one that I could find that seemed to have the least amount of, I guess, depictions on the screen that may describe who the person is that's speaking. They may highlight some points that they feel are important for the viewer to know. Even those have a way of being, I guess, biased from a certain perspective, whether it be the conservative side or the liberal side. So I was trying to find something that was neutral. As I am I'm not neutral. I don't wish to present that I'm neutral, but I wanted at least what I presented to be as neutral as possible. So those who have views from the conservative side and the liberal side each feel they have at least a fairness about what's being presented, so they can speak to their own desires and to their own beliefs without feeling like they're fighting against the tide, so to speak. So hopefully that it turns out that way. But without any other delay, I'll go ahead and start the beginning of this, so you can again continue to just listen to the testimony that went back and forth between Michael Cohen and the members of the committee.
Mr. Cohen, I want to finalize this issue relating to your truth in testimony form. The form requires you to list your contracts or payments originating from a foreign government, not from all foreign entities. We said we would give you a chance to consult with your attorneys. Have you done that, and do you have any additional information?
My 4 attorneys continue to believe, as they did before, that the language of the truth in testimony form, which I was given and signed just right before this hearing, and which requires disclosure of any contracts or payments from foreign governments in the last 2 years, did not apply to my work for BTA Bank, which is Kazakh-owned entity. They advised that had entities been intended for disclosure, that word would have been in the disclosure definition. However, if the committee's counsel has a different view that I should disclose my contract with BTA Bank, we'd be willing to do that.
All right. Now,
Mr. Chairman.
Let me finish.
Sure.
I want to understand clearly, you sought the advice of your counsel, is that right?
That's correct.
And your counsel advised you to say what you just said, is that right?
That's correct.
And you know that to be the truth, is that right?
Yes, sir.
I will yield to the gentleman.
I thank the chairman for his courtesy. Mr. Chairman, instead of making points of order and going back and forth on this, perhaps a way to solve this is for the chairman to request Mr. Cohen give to this committee all the foreign payments that he has received over the last 2 years, whether they're an entity or a government, because we have strong belief, Mr. Chairman, there's over $900,000 that came from the government of Kazakhstan on behalf of Mr. Cohen, and it is either the truth or the whole truth or nothing but the truth. And the rules, Mr. Chairman, really look at foreign payments that come from or with foreign governments, and the bank he's talking about is owned 81% by the Kazakhstan government.
Reclaiming my time, and then we're going to move on. What I will take, first of all, let me be clear. I said to Mr. Cohen that if he came in here and lied, I would nail him to the cross. Didn't I? Did I tell you that?
Yes, you did more than once.
All right. So if there's any ambiguity, I want that to be cleared up. I have no problem in working with you to make sure that's straightened out, because I don't want it to be a thing where he thinks one thing, we think one thing, and we can clear that up. All right. All right. We have a number of members that have been waiting.
Just on that subject, Mr. Chairman, I don't think we should limit it just to the BTA Bank, which has the affiliation with Kazakhstan. I think we should also look at Korea Aerospace Industries, one of his other clients, and any other client that's foreign that may have some connection to that respective country's government. I hope him and his attorneys look at all those and we get them exactly right as Mr. Meadows wants.
Reclaiming my time, we will take that certainly under advisement. I'm a man of my word. We will work with you and see what we can do to come up with that. I don't think that it's an unreasonable request. Mr. Garner. Hello? Garner? Yes, yeah.
Mr. Cohen, I want to focus my questions on the smoking gun document you have provided this committee. This document is compelling evidence of federal and state crimes, including financial fraud. You provided this committee with a check from President Donald J. Trump's revocable trust account, which is marked as Exhibit 5B. It is a check for $35,000, and it is dated March 17th, 2017, after the president took office. It's right now on the screen. Do you see it, sir?
Yes, sir.
To be clear, the Trump revocable trust is the trust the president set up to hold his assets after he became president. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Do you know why you were paid from the trust as opposed to the president's personal account?
I don't know the answer to that.
Did you think it was odd that he paid you once from his personal account and then he's paying you through the scheme of a trust?
I'll be honest, I was just happy to get the check.
Today you testify that the check was signed by Donald Trump Jr. and the Trump organization CFO Alan Weisselberg. Is that correct?
That is correct.
According to the criminal charges against you, you sent monthly invoices containing false information to an individual identified as Executive 1. Weisselberg is Executive 1, correct?
Yes.
The criminal charge against you then states that Executive 1 forwarded your invoice to someone referred to as Executive 2. Presumably, Donald Trump Jr., who's signing this check, is Executive 2, correct?
I believe so.
As federal prosecutors laid out in their criminal charges, payments like this check resulted in numerous false statements in the books and records of the Trump organization. And it's important for the American public to understand this. Nothing to do with collusion. This is financial fraud, garden variety financial fraud. It was disguised as a payment for legal services to you. But this was not a payment for legal services, was it, Mr. Cohen?
No, sir.
It could give rise to serious state and federal criminal liability if a corporation is cooking its books. Based on your testimony today, Donald Trump Jr. and Alan Weisselberg directed this payment to you and approved this payment. Is that right?
Mr. Trump initially acknowledged the obligation, the debt. Myself and Alan Weisselberg went back to his office, and I was instructed by Alan at the time that they were going to do this over 12 installments. And what he decided to do then was to have me send an invoice, in which case they can have a check cut. And then, yes, the answer would be yes to your follow-up.
And Donald Trump Jr. obviously signed off on this.
Yes, well, it would either be Eric Trump, Donald Trump Jr., and or Alan Weisselberg, but always Alan Weisselberg on the check.
And you think Executive 2 is Donald Trump Jr.?
Yes.
They knew that this payment was false and illegal, correct?
I can't make that conclusion.
You told Representative Kelly that the president was aware of this scheme. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I just want the American public to understand the explosive nature of your terrorist testimony in this document. Are you telling us, Mr. Cohen, that the president directed transactions in conspiracy with Alan Weisselberg and his son, Donald Trump Jr., as part of a criminal conspiracy of financial fraud? Is that your testimony today?
Yes.
And do you know if this criminal financial scheme that the president, Alan Weisselberg, and Donald Trump Jr. are involved in is being investigated by the Southern District of New York?
I'd rather not discuss that question because it could be part of an investigation that's currently ongoing.
But I just want the American public to understand that solely apart from Bob Mueller's investigation, there is garden variety financial fraud. And your allegation and the explosive smoking gun document suggest that the president, his son, and his CFO may be involved in a criminal conspiracy. And isn't it true, Mr. Cohen, that this criminal conspiracy that involved 4 people, that there's only one person so far who suffered the repercussions, and that's why you're in jail?
We'll be going to jail, yes.
There are 3 other people, though, who were equally involved in this conspiracy. Is
Yes.
that true?
It is true.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. I yield back my time.
Gomez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Cohen, I'm going to tackle the president's tax returns. During the 2016 campaign, you said you personally wouldn't, quote, allow him to release those returns until the audits are over, unquote. For the record, nothing prevents individuals from sharing their own tax returns, even while under audit by the IRS. Mr. Cohen, do you know whether President Trump's tax returns were really under audit by the IRS in 2016?
I don't know the answer. I asked for a copy of the audit so that I could use it in terms of my statements to the press, and I was never able to obtain one.
Okay. So, do you have any inside knowledge about what was in the president's tax returns that he refused to release?
I do not.
Can you give us any insight into what the real reason is that the president has refused to release his tax returns?
The statements that he had said to me was that what he didn't want was to have an entire group of think tanks that are tax experts run through his tax return and start ripping it to pieces, and then he'll end up in an audit and he'll ultimately have taxable consequences, penalties, and so on.
So that's an interesting point, that basically he said he didn't want to release his tax returns because he might end up in an audit. So could you presume from that statement that he wasn't under audit?
I presume that he's not under audit.
And the reason why I bring this up, because I'm also the only Democrat on this committee that also serves on the Committee of Ways and Means. It's the chief tax writing committee in the House of Representatives. And it's the only committee in the House of Representatives that has jurisdiction to request an American's tax returns. And that includes the President of the United States. My constituents need to know whether the president has financial ties that are causing him to protect his own bottom line rather than the best interests of this country. Can he be blackmailed because of his financial and business ventures, including by foreign governments? And I know the opposition is the first thing they're going to ask or say is that he released his financial disclosure forms. But I believe that there's other things we can learn from his taxes. Do you have any idea what we can learn in his tax returns if we actually we got our hands on them?
No, I've seen them. I just have never gone through them. They're quite long.
Quite long. One of the things I also find ironic is the way they're kind of attacking you is to undermine your credibility. Is one of the ways is by saying that you committed bank fraud and tax evasion. And the reason why is a big deal is that it really goes down to a person's character when it comes to taxes. But yet the Republican minority has never asked to see his taxes, right? Something that for 40 years, Democrats and Republicans alike have released their tax returns to prove to the American people that they didn't have financial interests that would be leverageable by a foreign government. But this minority refuses to ask for his tax returns. I also want to kind of go on. I'm noticing a pattern about the president and those in his inner circle. Special counsel Robert Mueller's team has indicted or received guilty pleas from 34 people and 3 companies that we know of, the latest being long-term Trump advisor Roger Stone. That group includes 6 former Trump advisors. It appears that the president has a fondness for entrusting those who will, 1, lie for him, 2, break the law for him, 3, cheat the system for him. Essentially, he wants to surround himself with people who are just like him. Would you agree with that statement?
From the facts and circumstances, it appears so.
Mr. Cohen, the American people have a lot of questions when it comes to this president, to his conduct. When he went to Helsinki and he bowed before Vladimir Putin. And nobody can really understand why he acts the way he acts. And we believe that the way we get those answers is really looking at everybody that surrounds him, who he's been associated with, and his tax returns, because that is the only way that we can get down to the bottom line. Thank you, and I yield back.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a unanimous consent request.
All right, go ahead.
I ask unanimous consent that we read for the record, a tweet from Dr. Darrell Scott, which says, Michael Cohen begged me repeatedly to ask POTUS to give him a job in the administration. He is still lying under oath. I ask unanimous consent.
No objection.
I have one more from Bob Deedle. Getting sick watching these hearings. I know Michael Cohen personally for many years, and he told me several times that he was very angry and upset that he didn't get a post in the White House, and that he, quote, would do what he has to do now to protect his family, close quote. I ask that be.
Mr. Chairman.
I thank you.
Mr. Chairman, 2 quick ones.
And then if we got other ones, we're going to do you, Mr. Ranking Member, then we'll do the other ones at the end, because I have some things too that I want to get in. Go ahead.
All right. I ask unanimous consent that an article in Salon magazine written by Stanley Brand, former House counsel to Tip O'Neill, titled the article is Oversight Committee Session with Michael Cohen Looks Like an Illegitimate Show Hearing,
Without objections, order.
I ask unanimous consent that a letter that Mr. Meadows and I sent to you, the chairman, requesting that you call Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein to testify at this hearing also be part of the record. Thank you,
Part of
Mr.
the
Chairman.
record.
Mr. Chairman, can I respond?
Just 1 second, all right? The article by Mr. Brennan,
Yep.
I just want to deal with this one right away. When we saw that article, Mr. Ranking Member, we knew that it was inaccurate. I mean, just on basics. I mean, the cases that Mr. Brand used are definitely distinguishable for what's going on here. And so we got Irvin B. Nathan, former general counsel of the House from 2007 to 2010, and she says, in short, the committee has ample jurisdiction and responsibility to hear and consider the upcoming voluntary testimony of Mr. Cohen. That's dated February 20,